Welcome back to Miss T.L.L. the English First Additional Language Lessons. Today we are going to delve deeper into the language section and then get to understand more about subject, verb, and object, as well as different types, if not different kinds of subject and objects. Now, the first definition that we are going to look into is to what is a subject, what we mean by a subject. The subject is the actor of the sentence, the person or thing doing the action. So in most cases, it will be the first letter, the first word, if not the first name. If the sentence starts with a name, it will be the first word in the sentence because that is the actor. We are depending on the subject to know who performs the action. So in essence, if I were to simplify it, I would say a subject is anything or someone who performs what? The action in a sentence. Anything or anyone who performs the action in the sentence. And then the verb is the doing word. A verb will become our action word of the sentence. The object now. The object will be is the element of the sentence that is acted on. That the verb is directed towards. So in essence, it means that this will be someone or anything that performs the action in the sentence, and then the verb will come our action word or doing word, and then whatever that is affected by the action of the verb becomes what your object. So when you look into a sentence, you should be in a position to thoroughly identify that which word is the subject, meaning the doer, and then the action word, and whatever that is being acted upon or that is being affected by the action of the verb, we call that what? The object. Now with reference to objects, we can have what you call a direct and an indirect object. Indirect object. Now we are going to the first word. Sometimes you may come across sentences where a sentence may include multiple objects. It means that it includes multiple words that are affected by the action of the verb. So we consider the first one to be that is acted upon by the action to be the direct one, and then the second one automatically is going to become our indirect one. So let us do it practically in such a way that to see as to whether we understand. Let us see the first one. The sentence says the dog is throwing the ball in the park. Who is performing the action in the sentence? The dog. So the dog becomes our subject because it is the doer. It is the one that is performing the action. The kind of action that the dog is performing is to do what? Is throwing. So the word throwing represents the action that is being done by the dog. This one becomes our verb. Now we pause at the verb in order to identify and correctly identify the object. The question may be, what is the dog throwing? The ball. So the ball becomes our object. This becomes our object. Now bear in mind, we have what you call a direct, and we can also have what you call an indirect object. Now the question may be again, where is this ball thrown? It's thrown where? In the park. So in the park becomes our indirect object, because it is also still it is a place that is also affected by the action of the by the action of the verb. So this one becomes our indirect object. So whenever you are asked to identify a sentence into subject, verb, and an object, and you are a bit confused as to which word actually is the object, you pause where the verb is and then ask yourself, where is it or what is being thrown? Here the dog is throwing what? The ball. So the first word that is affected by the action of the verb becomes your direct object. Now I must also emphasize that it's not in all sentences where you can come across a sentence encompassing both a direct and indirect object. Sometimes it's just a plain simple sentence where you have subject, verb, and an object, and then without having multiple objects. Let us go to number 2. We ate so much cake this afternoon, and then who's performing the action here is the word we. We are talking about we, so that we becomes our subject, and then the action that we performed was to do what? Was to eat. So this one becomes our verb. Now we remember, for us to successfully identify an object, we pause where the verb is and then we ask ourselves, what is that did we eat? We ate so much, and then We ate so much, but what is that did we eat? A cake. So a cake becomes our object. Now the question again can be, when did we eat this cake? This afternoon can become our indirect, but the most important or the most relevant object will become what? The cake, because it is the first word that is affected by the action of the verb that which is to eat. What did we eat? We ate a cake. So the word ate cake here, becomes our direct object. Direct object. Right, moving further along. Ryan and Melissa are buying a new house and a new car. This is a very interesting sentence because we've got multiple objects. Who's performing the action in the sentence here? We've got Ryan and Melissa. Both of them, they become the subject because they are what? Performing the action in the sentence. Okay, remember the subject will always be a person or anything that performs the action in the sentence, and the action that they are performing is to buy. All right, and then this becomes our verb. Remember, we pause where the verb is in order to identify an object. The question is, what are they buying? They are buying a new house and a new car. So collectively, both a car and a house, both of them, they become our objects. So whatever that is affected by the action of the verb becomes what? Your object. And then sentence 4, when we went to the store, my parents bought me some. Okay, let us just quickly look into this one and increase the font size. So it says, when we went to the store, my parents bought me some jeans. Now this one is interesting because it says when we, okay, when we went to the store, my parents bought me a, right, and then it says that when we went to the store, my parents bought me a jean, right? So here we are going to look at my parents being the subject of the sentence. The action that they perform was to buy, in a past tense, bought. Verb, remember we pause where the verb is and we ask ourselves, what did they buy? They bought, who did they buy? Or what they bought me. I'm the first person to be affected by the action of the verb. Again, what did they buy? Some jeans. Now I want us to study this one very carefully. When we went to the store, my parents, right? Remember, we are looking into, we want to carefully, if not successfully, differentiate between and establish a common understanding with regard to outlining which word in the sentence will be a first object, will be the direct object, or the second one that would be, of course, an indirect. But then when you say my parents bought, the question can be asked, who did they buy whatever that they bought to? So they bought me. This is a first word that is affected by the action of the verb. Then me becomes your direct object, and then some jeans becomes your indirect object. Some jeans becomes your indirect object, and then me becomes your direct object. Okay? Then sentence 5, for dinner, we are having steak and potatoes. So, for dinner, and these sentences are quite unique. If you can realize, some sentences do not necessarily start with a doer. They do not necessarily start with the action. For example, this one. This one, if you say my cousins, Pat and Meg, they are the ones who are going to perform the action. So automatically here they become what? The subject. However, you look at unique sentences like sentence 5, where it states for dinner. It is only after for dinner, that's when now the introduction of the pronoun we, that's when now the subject is being introduced after for dinner. So please don't get confused. Be mindful that a subject will always be the doer, anything or anyone who performs the action. So here it says that we, this pronoun now becomes our subject, and then having, okay, having becomes our verb. Remember, we always pause where the verb is to understand or to locate our object. What are we having? Steak and potatoes. So steak and potatoes here becomes our object. So here we don't have multiple objects, we only have one, which is steak and potatoes. My cousins Pat and Meg give the best advice. So here, who's performing the action? My cousins Pat and Meg. Both of them become our subject, and then the action that they are performing is to give. The question is, what are they giving? They are giving, you can't say presents, because here we have an adjective to describe the kind of present they are giving. So you take it in totality here to become your object. You say the best present. So the best present actually becomes what? Your object. So again, in the sentence, we don't have multiple objects. We only have one. So always you can realize or establish what is that I'm doing in order to, is this the skill that I'm trying to convey to you guys? That if you struggle to locate the objects, pause where the verb is and then ask yourself, what are they giving? And then the answer to that automatically becomes your object. What are they giving? They are giving the best present, so best present become your object. And then sentence 7, we opened the umbrella because it was raining. Okay, now of course, who's performing the action here? We've got we, then the word we, which is a pronoun, becomes our subject. What did we open? Open, this is the action that we performed, is to open. This is our verb. Remember, we always pause where the verb is in order to locate the object. What did we open? What did we open? I'm sorry, the umbrella. So the umbrella becomes our object. What I love about these sentences is that we are able to understand that the object is not always located at the end of the sentence. The object can also be in the middle of the sentence, and we can also have multiple objects, being it a direct and indirect object in the same sentence. So here we've got we, and then the action performed is to open. Remember, what is being acted upon affects that word to become the object. So what did you open? We opened that umbrella. Then umbrella becomes what? Your object. And the last sentence, the basement has 3 doors and 2 windows. What are we talking about here? We are talking about the basement. So the basement here becomes our subject. We've got our subject. And then has acts as a verb here. It acts as a verb. What does the basement have or has? It has what? 3 doors and 2 windows. In totality, it becomes our object. Okay, so in essence, what you have learned is that a subject will be anything or anyone who performs the action in a sentence. A verb will be an action word. Whatever that is being affected by the action of the verb becomes our object. And sometimes a sentence may also include both direct and indirect object. However, if you are asked to identify one, you take the first one, which is the direct, that is affected by the action of the verb. The reason we're doing this is because in the next segment you are going to learn how to change sentences from active to passive, and you can never learn how to change sentences from active to passive if you cannot successfully distinguish which word is a subject, which word is a verb, which word is an object in a sentence, because all these sentences are in an active voice because the subject is performing the action. So what we are going to do in the next lesson, we are now going to take the object of the sentence to become the subject of the sentence. So it is important to locate the correct object. Remember, let us take the last sentence again, just a recap. For dinner, we are having steak and potatoes. We are having and then having, or are actually having, and then what are we having? Steak and potatoes object. Always pause where the verb is, right? We, again, is a subject. Open, action. What is that we opened? The umbrella. So the umbrella becomes what? The object. So if you're not certain as to which word is the object in a sentence, please, I would say pause where the verb is and then you check the first word that is being acted upon by the verb or that is affected by the verb becomes your object. And remember, we can have a direct and indirect object where the direct one will be the first word that is being affected by the action of the verb, and then indirect will become the second word. And it's not in all sentences that can include a sentence that can encompass rather of a direct and indirect. Thank you.